So let's go back here and talk about management processes again. So I have this group. See how different this looks than that one where we went to and it was just the default list? This looks different because I've made these groups and I've organized the processes into groups. If I click this expand collapse, I can see all the processes in every group if I want to. And I can drag and drop between groups this way as well. And then if I hit this, it collapses again. So the usability of the control panel, I think to a certain degree, the more comfortable you can make it for the employees, the better, rather than just seeing the default list and having to click on it. If I see these little categories that either I've created for myself or my managers helped me create, it makes it more usable. So I'm going to click this management. So here's some processes that we've been through so far. We talked about the one-on-one meeting process. This is a fantastic management tool. This is that idea of this is that we sit down once a week, once a month, once a quarter, if that's all you can muster up, and we talk about how things are going. So we use this custom form, like an agenda form. What items do we want to discuss? What goals from last period? How are you doing? That's also a really important question to ask your employees every once in a while. How's life going? It lets them feel like, the company cares about them. So one-on-one meeting, where you can have this, ongoing dialogue about not only how are you doing, oh, I went back too far, but also how's work going? How's this process working? How can we make this process better? What do I think you need to do next week or next month or next quarter to get better in your position? What are your goals for next year? So all these types of conversations which make people feel valuable. That's one-on-one meetings. Another element to one-on-one meetings has to do with this process, which we didn't go into fully, but this is in the Guiding the Business Library, employee performance review. So think of it like this. We're having one-on-one meetings once a month, say twice a month. So now we have 12 meetings or 24 meetings under us, one-on-one meetings. And then at the end of the year, we're having a performance review. And what we're doing is recapping everything that went down in these 12 meetings or these 24 meetings. Every employee deserves an end of the year review, not just necessarily for whether they're going to get a raise or not, but it's just a checkpoint time to sit and say, how have you been doing? What's happening in your position? All of the work from these, I could simply go here and run a report and say, give me all the one-on-one amended agenda meetings for Sam for all of last year. I get a list of those things right here through reports. I look at them and remind myself, what did we talk about at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year? And I use all that good information to then construct my performance review. Then that's a really valuable review. It's not just something I've made up or I've been forced to kind of determine without any real evidence. I think that's why managers hate reviews, because you oftentimes have to just imagine what you're going to say and hope that it's right. And then you don't really have anything to back it up, because if someone asks why, well, then you have to go, well, that's just a feeling I have about you. That's the worst. So if you have all that evidence in these one-on-one meetings, then performance review is easy. We also talked about task delegation and work management. I'm going to put this one up to number 3. So if you remember, this process is about delegating. This really goes well with process assignment, because if I've gone through and decided what processes I can delegate, and if you remember this form down here, the delegation exercise, this is where you write out work you can never delegate, work you can delegate after you write a process for it, work you can delegate right now. If you as a manager goes through this and comes up with your list of these things, the work you can delegate right now, take that work and delegate it and assign it to the employee for them to do it. Take it off your plate. Work that you need to document a process for, have this be your priority to come up with a list of processes that you can delegate if you write them out, if you document the process for it. You could go to the dashboard, go to that process, assign it to another employee and say, let's document this together, or you start working on it. and move more towards being able to do management work and not work you shouldn't be doing. So that's task delegation and work management. Another element of this is holding employees accountable to the things that you've delegated to them. So the process assignment's great for that. Then we talked about this one. This is process solutions for management. So the idea of this process is I go through a step-by-step of determining, what problem is occurring right now. You go through this self-directed, outer-directed, process-directed. Is it my fault it's happening? No, it's your fault. Oh no, really? Let's make it the fault of a process. And then you go through a step-by-step for coming up with what that process is. So this is, I think, a fundamental management skill, being able to look at problems that occur and come up with process solutions. So here's a little exercise that you can do around that. So this guides you in, how do I make this process directed? How do I determine what the underlying cause is? What is the system solution for it? What priority does it have? So if you're a manager, say, and you have an employee who's complaining about something, you could assign them this process solutions form, and you can say in the assignment note, go through this with that problem and come up with a process solution. They're not allowed to make it self-directed or outer-directed. I can't say, well, it's the sales department's fault that they keep, overselling things. Or I have to come up with a process solution, even if that process is not something that I work or happens in my department. Because the managers can then work to say, okay, maybe he's right that we're overselling things. So let's go back to the sales process and see what we can fix. So if your employees come to you with problems like this, I mean, help them to own it. Especially if you are in the top box on the org chart and you've got managers who are coming to you with problems, have them own it. Come up with a process solution. I'll make the point again that I can come up with a process solution that doesn't have anything to do with my department. If I'm right, I'm right. And then the sales department needs to deal with it. This process also has, let's see, I think it's this form, frustration tracker. So here's this outline. So again, we don't need to like put the wheels on everything and go, okay, stop, we're not doing anything else until we fix this problem. That doesn't work in the real world. What you can do is track the frustrations or the problems, keep them on a list like this. If you have an employee that's complaining, send them the frustration form, have them fill it out, take the system solution to that and have them put it on the list, or you put it on your list. And we track these things. And then hopefully, once a month, once a quarter, whenever we can fit it in, and there's never going to be a good time, sit down and work on the process, work on the solution. This is why this whole, business area affected and missing results impact on the business or the customer. A lot of times when you start, putting out the process here, and this is an example of that, when you start writing it out, like the receptionist shows up 2 to 3 times late every week, what's the area affected? Well, management, sales, everybody. What's lost? All of this is lost. Who's it impact? All these people. So then you think to yourself, once you lay it out like this, wow, this is a big deal, but we should make time to do this. It kind of brings the priority back into focus. So that's this process solution for management. You can change any of this too. You download this from the library. If you don't like this title, you can change it. If you don't like the way the work plan flows, you can change it. You could do a new form. All of this is, customized. But this again is a primary fundamental skill of any manager. When I'm interviewing managers, I always ask about this. How do you handle problems? If I was to give you this scenario, what would you do? And I make the scenario very outer focus. So if that person is outer focus, they would latch onto that and say, well, it's that person and this person's problem. If they can view it as a process solution right away, well, then you know that they are thinking in the correct way. And then we started talking about last week, let me scoot this up, strategic planning for departments, for people, for positions. So I tailored this one to this human resources 2024 strategic planning, and this is what the document looks like. So y'all saw me last week go and download this process from the library, strategic planning, and then we made a copy of this form. And then we built a new process and called it strategic planning for human resources. And then we moved the form into it. And now this became the process that is strategic planning for human resources and is linked to the manager of human resources, the manager of admin finance position. And now this is their strategic planning for the year. So you could just simply look at, if you're a manager, you could look at your position here. This is you, and then all your employees underneath. And you could build a strategic planning form for every single one of them, for customer service, for bookkeeping, for reception. If you have multiple customer service people, then they all should get that form that they fill out. You can have individual goals, you can have department goals. If you have one person, it's a little bit easier because you're working just with them on what their goals are. Just because you're not a manager doesn't mean that you shouldn't be moving towards results like strategic planning, like improving what you're doing to get a certain result. All of that is really important for frontline employees. But if you're this person up here, these three people really need strategic planning because you're asking them, what are your goals for your whole department for the year? So up here, the board of directors, the chairman of the board is setting goals for the company in order to increase the value of the asset. This person then implements those goals and makes sure they happen through these people down here. So doing strategic planning with your department heads is the way that that happens. So take that form, duplicate it, build it at minimum, build one for every department, link it to their position, and then go here with them to the dashboard, your key managers, and play around with it. Have everybody select it from their control panel, just like this. Organize your processes if that hasn't been done yet. Choose the strategic planning process. Just go right to the form and fill out the form. So what is process development that you want to get done? Listed over here. This is for the whole year. The annual priorities is this section. What are goals like reducing employee turnover? We want it to be no more than 10% per year. Staff training, reporting. So you're listing out all of these priorities that you have for 2024, everything you want to get done. And then break it down into the quarters. And then this becomes your action items. This becomes what you go back to with your managers, once a month at least, and talk about where you're at, what have we done. And so this is the way, you teach them to be strategic as well as you teach them to focus on process as much as you can. Because if you want to achieve a goal, oftentimes it's about documenting a process that will allow you to achieve that goal through your employees.